The candlelight flickered with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, casting long, fluid shadows that danced across Sarah's face like whispers. She looked breathtaking, otherworldly in her soft, silk-red dress. Every curve kissed by the amber glow. Her eyes held a quiet recognition, a knowing glint that said she understood the weight of this evening. The unspoken hope behind the dinner Dexter had so carefully arranged. I'd done my part, lit each candle with precision, arranged every detail with aching care, clinging to the desperate belief that this strange ritual might finally open a door. My loving wife, Sarah, had been a ghost of herself lately. Swallowed by the creeping shadows of her father's Alzheimer's, she refused therapy. A brick wall against my desperate pleas. So when Dexter, my old college buddy, emerged as a hypnotherapist with unconventional methods, a desperate hope ignited within me. I still remember the day Dexter messaged me, an unexpected ping on Instagram like a ghost tapping through the glass. "Moving to your city, Jacob, let's grab lunch," just a casual line almost forgettable. But that message became the first thread in a tangled tapestry of hypnosis, buried memories, and a love deeper and darker than anything I could have imagined. I invited him over when Sarah was out. I hadn't planned to spill everything, but it came pouring out. My fears about her depression, the way her father's slow unraveling was grinding her spirit down. I was drowning in helplessness, desperate for a lifeline. Then Dexter dropped it. "I'm a hypnotherapist now, got some well-paying clients." Something flickered in my mind, wild, irrational, half-formed. And before I could stop myself, the words were out. "You should try working with Sarah." He gave me that look, Dexter's signature smile, sharp-edged and unreadable. "I'll think about it," he said. I pushed, I begged. "She needs help, Dexter, anything." That's when he takes a deep breath. His gaze steady and mentioned his unconventional methods. He said it like a warning, maybe it was. Maybe I should have listened, but I was past listening, past reason. "I'm willing to try anything," I told him, my voice thick, almost cracking. And again, that smile, that maddening, knowing smile. "I'll think about it," he said. Then came the messages. Dexter had begun watching her from a distance at first. He started running her morning route, timing his steps to hers. He followed her to work, then to her father's house, silently observing the rituals of her quiet devotion. He saw her walk with her father, saw the way she steadied his trembling hand, the way her eyes held that fierce, undiluted love. That look, he later told me, was what sealed it for him. The purity, the depth of feeling she carried for a man slipping away. That afternoon, his text came, "I'm accepting your request." The relief was instant, a tidal wave crashing through my chest. This was it, the moment I'd clung to in secret, our last hope, our beginning. I told Sarah that I'd invited an old friend for dinner, just like Dexter had asked me to tell her. Dinner was normal at first. Dexter slipped easily into the role of the polite old friend, charming, casual, almost forgettable. We tore into our steaks, the clinking of silverware and low hum of conversation filling the space with a sense of practiced ease. But then the wine started to flow, and with it, something shifted. Dexter's tone, once warm and conversational, deepened. It grew smoother and slower. There was a gravity to it now, a quiet pull. His eyes, once flickering with casual warmth, settled on Sarah's with unnerving stillness, steady, focused, mesmerizing. Then came the breath work. Slow, rhythmic, and deliberate. I didn't even notice I'd started matching him until the room seemed to hush around us. Covert hypnosis, he'd called it once. I felt a coil of tension tighten low in my gut as he leaned in slightly and invited us gently to try a breathwork technique. Sarah laughed, a little tipsy, a little charmed. Weird and goofy, she called it through a giggle, but she didn't resist. She was already too relaxed, too far gone to say no. And so it began, an hour-long deep breathing session. With Dexter's voice a steady, rhythmic drumbeat in the candlelit room, he began to weave affirmations into his words, subtle at first, then growing more direct. I saw Sarah's eyes glaze over, her body relaxing into a state of profound stillness. Her conscious mind, the one that stubbornly resisted therapy, was lulled to sleep. And then, right before my eyes, he began to mold her subconscious. It was a surreal, almost terrifying experience, watching him reach into the deepest parts of my wife's mind. What I didn't know then, what I only realized much later, was that I was caught in his web too. His words, his breathing, his presence, they were working on me, seeping into my own open and receptive subconscious. Dexter had observed Sarah's unwavering love for her father, so he began to use a hypnosis induction which takes Sarah through a series of interconnected memories of her childhood and her dad. She seized the moment she took her first breath as she was born. She saw the look of pure wonderment and unconditional love on the face of her father. She saw him teach her ride a bicycle. She saw countless nights of bedtime stories with her father, and she saw the tears which rolled out of the corner of his eyes as she left for college. Sarah lived these moments again, and I witnessed them through my vivid imagination. As Sarah sunk deeper and deeper into hypnosis, reliving each breath of her childhood, then at the snap of his fingers, Dexter commanded Sarah to see the faces of her father, and I become one. And as she did, her breath began to become heavier. I watched her become more and more agitated. I wanted to stop Dexter, but I was unable to say anything in the deep state of hypnosis. At the snap of his fingers, Sarah's imagination shut off and her breath became calmer by the second. Dexter looked deep into her eyes and he began to synchronize his breathing with her. As she inhaled, Dexter inhaled. As she exhaled, so did he. Dexter continued deepening their eye contact, and as he put his hand right above her chest, Sarah snapped out of her hypnosis and was confused why she was looking at Dexter. I gradually awoke out of his trance, and I was a bit confused by Dexter's actions. Dexter didn't talk about what had happened, and Sarah went to sleep early. As Dexter was about to leave, I asked him what really happened. Dexter told me to watch and observe my wife for the following days. He told me, "Don't worry, Jacob, she'll be all right, she is a keeper." The next morning, Sarah woke up radiant, truly radiant. She was rested, refreshed, a quiet hum of contentment emanating from her. She greeted me with a loving smile, made my morning coffee for me, and then I noticed it, a shift, subtle at first, then undeniable. She was different, more meek, more submissive, but not in a way that felt wrong or disempowering. It was a profound sense of devotion, a quiet admiration that shone from her eyes. Last night's session, whatever Dexter had done, had opened something in her. Her heart, once guarded, now poured out to me. I hadn't felt this quality of love, this depth of devotion from Sarah in years. When I met Sarah 3 years ago, she was like a delicate, wild bird, vulnerable, aloof, and beautiful in her untamed spirit. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to trust me, and when she finally opened up, it was a torrent of love and acceptance I'd never experienced before. I cherished her affection, guarding it fiercely, taking care of her with every fiber of my being. But then her father got sick, and it was as if a curtain fell between us. She became distant, aloof, retreating into an emotional prison cell where I couldn't reach her. It was agonizing, watching her suffer, knowing I was powerless to help. And even though Dexter had undeniably pushed boundaries, had perhaps even violated a trust, I couldn't deny the warmth of her presence, the palpable love radiating from her open heart. It felt so good, so right to have her back, to feel that connection again. That evening I called Dexter. He immediately apologized, his voice laced with genuine regret. "I should have informed you better before beginning the ritual, Jacob," he said, his voice surprisingly humble. I cut him off. Can you continue to help her?" The desperation was back in my voice, a desperate plea for more of this newfound connection. He paused. "I'll need more time, Jacob, to connect deeper with her, to prepare a more potent induction." In the weeks that followed, Dexter remained a shadowy presence, observing Sarah from a distance. I saw the changes, too. Her morning runs lengthened. She started taking the scenic route to work, savoring the journey. She ate whatever she desired, indulging in simple pleasures, a stark contrast to her previous rigid routine. And she spent more time with me, truly with me, not just physically present. She still visited her father every day, but the visits grew shorter, less burdened. It was as if she was prioritizing her own well-being, her own peace. She developed a newfound clarity, a remarkable ability to process her emotions. The suffocating weight of her father's illness still existed, but it no longer consumed her. Meanwhile, her father's health continued its relentless decline. One day, he couldn't remember Sarah's name. It was a devastating blow, a cruel marker of the disease's progress. Sarah spent the entire day with him, her grief palpable, yet strangely contained. He was becoming delirious, the last vestiges of his once sharp mind fading into a fog. As she explored her old room, a dusty album of her childhood caught her eye. It was a chronicle of her life, from her first breath to her first wobbly bike ride. And then she saw it, a shock of confusion, then agitation. In every picture, her father's face had been replaced with mine. She dropped the album, the thud echoing in the quiet house, and stumbled back into the living room, her mind reeling. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Dexter. He stood there, calm and collected, as if he knew, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "I'm here to help your father," he said, his voice quiet, unwavering. He walked past her, straight to her father's room. Sarah followed, her heart pounding. She watched, transfixed, as Dexter took her father's hand, guiding him into relaxation with deep, soothing breaths. Her father, who hadn't slept well in days, succumbed to Dexter's gentle guidance in minutes. It was astonishing. Once her father was asleep, Dexter suggested they sit in the living room. As she walked in, the room was bathed in the soft glow of candles, just like that unforgettable dinner night. And then I walked in from the kitchen, offering Dexter a glass of red wine. Sarah's agitation spiked. How did you relax my father?" Her voice was a strained whisper. "And why was Jacob's face in my childhood pictures? What happened that night, Dexter?" Dexter remained unnervingly calm, sipping his wine. "You're hiding something, Sarah." "I am not," she cried, her voice rising. "You're hiding something from yourself," he corrected gently. "What are you talking about?" The frustration, the confusion, the raw emotion in her voice was heartbreaking. Dexter closed his eyes, took slow, deep breaths. "I see a vision of you," he began, his voice a low, resonant hum, flashes of her childhood as I connect deeper with her spirit. Then the revelations began, glimpses of a woman screaming, the cacophony of a verbal fight. It was her mother and her father, a deluge of images, her mother trying to calm him, her mother with incredible love and devotion, caring for him despite his cruelty. All buried deep in her subconscious, too traumatic for her conscious mind to bear. Her mother had died when Sarah was 7, and ever since, Sarah had adopted her mother's role, loving, devoted, always caring for her father, even when he was emotionally abusive. "Close your eyes, Sarah," Dexter commanded, his voice gentle but firm, and as she did, the dam broke. All those buried memories, a lifetime of suppressed trauma, flooded her mind in an instant. Her body began to shake uncontrollably, streams of tears pouring down her face. Dexter looked at me. "Jacob, hold her hand, help her sit on the couch." I did, my heart aching for her, but also recognizing the profound healing that was taking place. Dexter continued, his voice a balm. "You no longer need to relive the life of your mother. Your subconscious mind learned to emulate her emotions, and it has limited her growth. It's okay to evolve now, to embrace your own inner wisdom." Tears streamed down my own face, tears of relief, of gratitude. I thanked Dexter, my voice thick with emotion. Sarah leaned into me, utterly exhausted, and fell asleep on my shoulder. When she woke up, she was in our bedroom. I was caressing her hair, a warm mug of coffee in my hand. She sat up, her eyes clear, a profound sense of peace radiating from her. "I'm so sorry, Jacob," she whispered. "There's nothing to apologize for," I said, a soft smile on my face. "You're not that woman anymore." Her eyes widened, a dawning wonder in them. "I feel like a new person, as if I just took my first breath today, like a rebirth. The old emotions, the subconscious limitations, the unprocessed feelings, they've just melted away." She looked at me, her gaze filled with a love that took my breath away. "I love you more than anyone in the whole world," she said. Sarah continued to care for her father, her devotion now untainted by the ghosts of the past. She did so until he became too sick, until he had to be hospitalized. And when he finally passed, there were no negative emotions, no lingering resentment. Only a profound sense of forgiveness, a quiet peace. She was ready to live her new life with clarity, with gratitude, and with a fulfillment she'd never known. She was my Sarah reborn, and ours was a love story, finally, truly unbound. Life with Sarah after her father's passing was, for a time, a blissful dream. The weight was truly lifted. We moved through our days with a lightness I hadn't known possible, our love blossoming anew in the fertile ground of her newfound peace. She was vibrant, present, and the devotion she felt for me was a constant, warming glow. I reveled in it, in her, convinced that our journey through the darkness was complete. But then, her visions began. Not nightmares, not exactly, but unsettling nonetheless. Sarah would wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes whispering, sometimes a choked gasp escaping her lips. "My mother," she'd say, her eyes wide, still caught in the tendrils of sleep. I saw her, she was crying. At first, I dismissed them as residual stress, the mind processing old traumas in new ways, but they grew more frequent, more vivid. She described scenes, fragmented and fleeting, her mother's hands trembling, a whisper, a fearful glance, a sense of overwhelming sadness. The newfound clarity she'd possessed began to fray at the edges, replaced by a subtle anxiety, a nagging unease that clung to her like a shroud. "I think I need Dexter again," she admitted one morning, her voice small. My heart sank, part of me, a deeply selfish, insecure part, wanted to hoard this revitalized Sarah to keep her to myself. Away from the man who had, however heroically, peeled back the layers of her psyche. I cherished our deepened connection, the ease and intimacy that had returned, but the thought of Dexter, his intense gaze, his unconventional methods, his mysterious influence, it stirred a cocktail of emotions within me. Gratitude, yes, but also a creeping unease, a flicker of something akin to jealousy. I knew rationally that he was helping her, that he was her path to true healing, but the way she spoke of him, the way her eyes held a certain reverence when his name was mentioned, it was a knot in my stomach I couldn't ignore. I tried to be supportive, of course. Whatever you need, my love, I'd say, my voice steady, betraying none of the internal conflict. But the truth was, every time Dexter's name came up, every time she spoke of his ability to see into her, a tiny chasm seemed to open between us. I watched her, observed her interactions with him when he came over, which was becoming more frequent. Their rapport was undeniable, a connection born of shared vulnerability and profound trust. He understood her in a way I, her husband, couldn't. It was a bitter pill to swallow. Sarah, innocent in her pursuit of complete emotional freedom, was oblivious to my internal turmoil. She'd light up when Dexter arrived, her smile brighter, her laughter more unrestrained. He was a beacon, guiding her through the labyrinth of her past, and she clung to his light. I saw the way her eyes lingered on him, the quiet attentiveness she gave his words. I knew it wasn't romantic, not in the traditional sense, but it was an intimacy, a profound bond that made me feel like an outsider looking in. I was her husband, her rock, but he was her healer, her guide to uncharted emotional territories. And sometimes, in those quiet moments, I felt a deep, unsettling ache of loss. Dexter, ever the enigmatic one, seemed to sense my apprehension. He'd offer me a reassuring smile, a fleeting glance that seemed to say, "Trust the process, Jacob." But his presence, his deepening connection with Sarah, was a constant, low thrum of anxiety beneath the surface of my renewed happiness. One evening, after another particularly vivid dream that left Sarah trembling, Dexter came over. The air in the room was thick with anticipation, with unspoken emotions. He guided her into a deeper meditative state than I'd ever witnessed, his voice a gentle current carrying her down. This time he didn't just see glimpses, he delved into the full, unvarnished truth of her mother's life, of the silent suffering, the unspoken sacrifices. He spoke of her mother's dreams, her forgotten aspirations, the quiet strength that had been overshadowed by her abusive marriage. He helped Sarah see her mother not just as a helpless victim, but as a woman of immense resilience, of unwavering love despite impossible circumstances. And in that moment, Sarah saw the full burden her mother had carried, the emotional weight she had unknowingly inherited. There was a final, cathartic release. Sarah sobbed, not with agitation, but with a profound sense of understanding, of empathy, and finally of liberation. It was as if the last chains of her subconscious burdens were shattering, dissolving into the air. When she emerged, her eyes were no longer shadowed by anxiety, but shone with a brilliant, untroubled peace. She was truly, irrevocably free. The following morning, a quiet stillness settled over our home. Sarah was different again, but this time the change felt permanent, complete. The faint echoes of her mother's dreams were gone, replaced by a quiet strength, a gentle confidence. Then a few days later, I received a text from Dexter, short, concise, but weighty with unspoken meaning. "My purpose here is fulfilled. Sarah is whole. I'm moving on, Jacob, wishing you both all the love and joy in your new lives." A profound sense of completion washed over me, tinged with a strange sadness. I knew I had watched him. I had seen the connection, the unspoken understanding between him and Sarah. He had grown deeply attached to her journey, to the raw, beautiful soul he had helped to heal. But he had honored our friendship, honored his unspoken promise to me by letting her go. He could have stayed, perhaps even cultivated a different kind of relationship, but he chose to step back, to allow Sarah to fully embrace her own life with me, her husband, by her side. It was a testament to his character, a quiet act of grace. He had played his part, the catalyst, the guide, and now he was receding, leaving us to navigate our beautifully transformed lives. I realized then that Dexter hadn't just healed Sarah. He had, in a way, healed me too, freeing me from the emotional prison of watching her suffer and showing me the true depth of her love. Our love story, once fraught with hidden pain, was now truly, utterly unbound. The weeks that followed Dexter's departure were a revelation. Sarah was unequivocally radiant. The lingering shadows that had clung to her like a second skin had vanished entirely, replaced by a luminous joy that spilled over into every corner of our lives. Her laughter, once a hesitant melody, now rang free and clear. Our home hummed with a new energy, a vibrant tapestry woven with shared glances, whispered secrets, and an intimacy that transcended the physical. I found myself rediscovering my wife, not just the woman I loved, but a new, unburdened version of her, a version I hadn't dared to dream of. For a time, the memory of Dexter, while present, was muted, a grateful echo in the background of our happiness. His absence left a void, perhaps, but it was overshadowed by the fullness of Sarah's presence. I told myself my jealousy had been irrational, a fleeting shadow cast by my own anxieties. He had done what he set out to do, and he had left. The narrative was complete. But life, as I was learning, rarely follows a clean, linear plot. One crisp autumn evening, a little over a month after Dexter's departure, Sarah stirred in her sleep. Not a gasp this time, not a whisper, but a low, guttural moan that clawed its way from the depths of her subconscious. I jolted awake, my heart thudding against my ribs. Her body was rigid, her face contorted in an expression of sheer terror. Sarah, wake up." I gently shook her shoulder, my voice laced with panic. Her eyes snapped open, wide and unfocused, filled with a primal fear I hadn't seen since the darkest days of her father's decline. "Jacob, I saw her," she stammered, her voice trembling. "My mother, but she wasn't crying this time. She was screaming, not from pain, but from something else, something darker, and there was a smell stale, like old wood and fear." The dream haunted her. For days she walked around with a haunted look in her eyes, jumping at shadows, her vibrant energy dulled by an unseen fear. The radiant glow began to dim, replaced by a subtle pallor. We tried everything, long walks, comforting dinners, even a weekend getaway, but the fear persisted, a relentless whisper at the edge of her consciousness. It was like a new, insidious knot had tied itself in her subconscious, one that Dexter's previous work hadn't fully untangled. Reluctantly and tentatively, Sarah admitted, "I need Dexter again. I know it's strange, Jacob, but he's the only one who can go there, into the depths of what's hidden." Her voice was soft, laced with a vulnerability that tugged at my heart, yet also a subtle, almost imperceptible certainty that chilled me to the bone. She wasn't asking anymore, she was stating a necessity. My internal conflict flared anew, hotter and more intense than before. I had convinced myself that his work was done, that his presence was no longer required, but here we were, back at the precipice. The thought of Dexter returning, of him once again becoming the most crucial figure in Sarah's healing, sent a tremor of possessiveness through me. He had helped her, yes, but at what cost to our unique connection? Was I merely a custodian of her healed self, while he was the architect of her soul? I swallowed my pride, my burgeoning insecurity. "Okay, Sarah," I said, my voice carefully neutral, "call him." Dexter arrived within a day, his presence as calming and commanding as ever. He greeted us with that familiar, knowing smile, but his eyes, when they met Sarah's, held an intensity that I found myself resenting. They had a language, a silent understanding, forged in the crucible of her past traumas. Their sessions began, and this time they were different, more frequent, more immersive. Dexter didn't just guide Sarah, he seemed to enter her world, interpreting her dreams, connecting seemingly disparate fragments of memory. He began to introduce new concepts, subtly weaving in ideas about generational echoes, ancestral memory, and the energetic imprints left by past lives. It was far beyond simple therapy, drifting into realms that made my scientific mind reel. I started observing them with a hawk-like intensity. Sarah would recount her dreams, her voice hushed, her gaze fixed on Dexter, hanging on his every word. He would listen, nodding, his deep voice offering interpretations, drawing connections that seemed to unravel the very fabric of her reality. She was utterly mesmerized, utterly dependent on him. It wasn't just trust, it was a profound attachment, a spiritual tether that seemed to bypass me entirely. I saw the way her hand sometimes lingered on his arm as she explained a dream, a purely unconscious gesture, but one that twisted a knife in my gut. I saw the way her eyes lit up when he shared a new insight, a spark of recognition that I yearned to elicit. He was unlocking parts of her soul that I, her husband, had never even known existed, let alone accessed. My conflict festered. I was grateful, yes, eternally grateful, for the serenity he brought her, for the light he restored. But beneath that gratitude seethed a potent cocktail of fear and resentment. What if he truly understood her better than I ever could? What if this profound healing, this deep exploration, forged a bond that eclipsed ours? What if, in her pursuit of completeness, she found a different kind of wholeness with him? I tried to talk to Sarah about it once. "You seem incredibly connected to Dexter," I'd ventured, my voice attempting casualness, but failing miserably. She looked at me, genuinely surprised. "He's helping me, Jacob. He sees things, he understands what's buried. It's like he speaks the language of my soul." Her words, innocent as they were, landed like blows, the language of her soul. What language did I speak? The language of everyday life, of mundane comforts, of a love that suddenly felt insufficient, perhaps even shallow, in comparison to the depths Dexter plumbed. Dexter, perceptive as always, must have noticed my unease. He started including me more in their debriefs, explaining the concepts, trying to bridge the gap, but it was like listening to a foreign language. He spoke of collective unconsciousness, of soul contracts, of energetic blockages that resonated through generations. It was all so unconventional, so far removed from the grounded reality I knew, the reality I shared with Sarah. The dreams continued, escalating in intensity. The screaming, the fear, the smell of old wood, they became more vivid, more insistent. Dexter, in a particularly grueling session, pushed Sarah deeper than ever before. He theorized that the dreams weren't just about her mother's suffering, but about a suppressed memory, a dark secret that Sarah herself had witnessed, a secret that had been so terrifying, so unspeakable, that her subconscious had not only buried it, but had warped it, reinterpreted it through the lens of her mother's pain. He described his method, a controlled regression, where Sarah would revisit the specific memory, not as a passive observer, but as herself, fully present, but with the tools to process the trauma without being overwhelmed. It It sounded dangerous, terrifying. I wanted to object, to pull Sarah away, but she was resolute, her eyes alight with a desperate need for answers. She needed to know. "I need to face it, Jacob," she told me, her voice firm. "This isn't just about my mother's pain anymore, it's about my truth. I can feel it deep inside me. There's something else." During that pivotal session, the air in the room crackled with an almost palpable energy. Dexter's voice was a steady anchor, guiding Sarah through the swirling mists of her past. He led her back to that old house, the one she'd visited where her father had passed, back to a specific day, a specific hour, long forgotten. And then she saw it. It wasn't just shouting, it was a physical altercation. Her father in a drunken rage, his words venomous, his hands raised. And her mother not just crying but cornered, terrified, trying to shield Sarah, a terrified child, from the onslaught. But the twist, the truly gut-wrenching twist, wasn't just the abuse. It was Sarah's action. In her terror, in her desperate attempt to protect her mother, she had done something. A small, seemingly insignificant act, but one that her child's mind had perceived as a betrayal. A moment of weakness that had inadvertently escalated the situation, or perhaps, in her memory, had contributed to her mother's eventual demise. Not literally, of course, but the child's mind had twisted it into a burden of guilt. The smell of old wood, the fear, the screaming, it all converged on a single horrifying memory. Her mother, cornered near an old wooden chest in the attic. Sarah, a tiny figure, trying to intervene, perhaps by grabbing her father's leg only to be shoved aside, leading to her mother taking the full brunt of his rage. Crying had been her mother's silent plea for help, a desperate, unspoken anguish that Sarah, as a child, had internalized as her own failure. The screaming she'd heard in her dreams was the sound of her own inner child, trapped, witnessing, and believing herself responsible. The tears that poured from Sarah's eyes were different this time. They were tears of profound, agonizing self-forgiveness. She wasn't just mourning her mother's pain, she was releasing her own buried guilt, the silent accusation she had held against herself for decades. I watched frozen as the truth unfolded before me. It was a dimension of pain, a layer of psychological complexity I could never have imagined. Dexter, calm and focused, guided her through the torrent of emotion, helping her to rewrite the narrative in her mind. Not a betrayal, but an act of love, however small, from a terrified child. He helped her understand that her mother's strength lay not in succumbing, but in protecting her daughter, in enduring so Sarah could survive. When Sarah finally emerged from that session, she was utterly spent, but a new kind of light shimmered in her eyes. It was a light of profound self-acceptance, a hard-won peace that radiated from the deepest part of her being. The past, no longer a source of hidden terror, was now merely a story she could recount, painful but understood. After this final, grueling session, a shift occurred in the dynamic between Sarah and Dexter. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but I, ever the keen observer, now sensed it. Sarah's dependence on him lessened, replaced by a quiet inner strength. She still spoke of him with reverence, but it was the reverence one holds for a brilliant teacher, not a lifeline. The attachment I had so feared, the one that made my stomach clench, began to dissipate. And Dexter, he too, began his subtle retreat. His visits became less frequent, his calls shorter. He started gently deflecting Sarah's questions about future sessions, instead empowering her to rely on her own newfound inner wisdom. He encouraged her to trust her own intuition, to process emotions through the tools he had given her, rather than seeking his direct intervention. I saw it in his eyes, too, a profound sense of satisfaction, a quiet pride in her healing, but also a hint of something else, a flicker of reluctance, a touch of melancholy. I knew with a certainty that transcended jealousy that Dexter had formed a deep, almost spiritual bond with Sarah. He had witnessed her at her most vulnerable, navigated the treacherous currents of her past, and guided her to a place of profound wholeness. He had seen the raw, beautiful core of her soul, something few others, even I, had ever truly witnessed in its entirety. And I suspected, though he would never admit it, that a part of him cherished that connection, that he felt a unique resonance with her. But he was a man of his word. He had promised to heal her, and he had done so completely. His purpose was fulfilled. One day I received a final, more substantial email from him. Not a text this time, but a carefully composed message, almost a valediction. "Dear Jacob," it began, his usual formality returning. "I am writing to inform you that I will be leaving the city at the end of the month. My work here with Sarah is complete. She has done the most extraordinary work, journeying into the depths of her being with unparalleled courage. Her transformation is a testament to her strength, and I am humbled to have been a part of it." My heart gave a strange lurch. Humbled, he truly saw it as a sacred mission. "You entrusted me with a precious gift, Jacob," the email continued. "The well-being of someone you love dearly. I hope I have honored that trust. Sarah is truly whole now, free from the burdens that weighed her down. She has found her own inner compass, and she no longer needs my guidance to navigate the intricate landscapes of her soul. Then came the part that truly struck me, the part that confirmed my deepest suspicions, yet also filled me with a quiet respect. "My purpose with Sarah is fulfilled," he wrote, the words almost a sigh. "I wish you both all the love, joy, and boundless fulfillment in your new lives together. May your journey be one of continued growth, understanding, and unwavering connection." There was no hint of personal attachment, no direct confession of his feelings, but I read between the lines, felt the subtle undercurrent of a profound, selfless letting go. He had become deeply attached to Sarah, to the radiant woman she had become under his guidance. He had seen her soul laid bare, had helped reconstruct it, and yet he chose to honor our friendship, to honor the sacred space of our marriage by stepping away. He could have nurtured that connection, perhaps even blurred the lines, but he didn't. He kept his promise, not just to heal Sarah, but to ultimately return her, whole and unbound, to me. It was the quietest, most profound act of love I had ever witnessed, a love not of possession, but of pure liberation. And as Dexter receded into the distance, a figure once intensely present, now a benevolent memory, I knew that our story, Sarah's and mine, had been not just saved, but elevated to a plane I hadn't thought possible. We were truly unbound, ready for whatever life held, together, forever.